You know, sometimes all it takes is a smell. Just this morning, I opened the oven and Lord have mercy, the scent of that apple pie just about knocked me back to 1961. I don't mean in the silly, oh I remember that song kinda way. I mean I was there. Back in Mama's kitchen, linoleum floor all cracked up, sunlight slipping through the gingham curtains, and her old radio hummin' Patsy Cline like it was breathing. Crazy. I'm crazy for feelin' so lonely. That smell, cinnamon and brown sugar and butter crust, it just unlocked something in me. And wouldn't you know it, I stood there holdin' that pie in my oven mitts, eyes gettin' all foggy, thinkin', how funny it is, what sticks with us. Not the big moments, not the birthdays or graduations, just the sound of a spoon stirrin' in a chipped bowl, the hush before someone walks out the door, a scent that grabs you by the throat and says, remember. Well, that pie's still on the counter, coolin' now. I haven't touched it. It don't feel right to, not today. You see, lately, there's been something hangin' around my mind, like an old coat I can't seem to put away. A story. Mine, I suppose. But not just mine. It's about time, and distance, and silence, and how love, sometimes, gets stuck somewhere between too late and not yet. I don't usually talk like this. I'm more the how's the weather kind of gal. But something about this morning made me think. Maybe it's time I said it out loud. Maybe it's time I let myself be known. You know, I've got grandkids. 3 of them. You'd think that'd mean birthday cards and giggles in the backyard, wouldn't ya? But no. I haven't seen those babies not once. Not even through a car window. Not one messy little hug or peanut buttery kiss. They live just a half hour down Highway 30, but it may as well be across the Atlantic, far as I'm concerned. It's not their fault. They don't even know me. Not really. I'm just a name on a Christmas card, if that. Maybe a photograph buried in a drawer. Or a story their mama doesn't like to tell. But I am their grandmother, June Elizabeth Crawley. And once upon a time, I rocked their mama to sleep in a room no bigger than a broom closet. I sang lullabies through tired lips and made do with what I had, which wasn't much, Lord knows. We didn't have a pot to pee in back then, but we had love. At least, I thought we did. Now, I sit in this little house, same town, same kettle, whistlin', just for me. And I think maybe if I tell this story, if I say it out loud, straight into this little camera, maybe someday, someone will hear it. Maybe even one of you, my sweet babies. I don't say this to blame anyone. Not your mama, not life, not even time itself. I just want to be known. Just a little. Just enough that if you ever wonder, who is Grandma June? Well, this'll be here. So I'll start from where the ache begins. That's always the best place, isn't it? Where the ache begins. And maybe, just maybe, by the end of this, you'll feel like you knew me after all. I grew up in a place where the wind smelled like wheat and sunburned skin was just part of summer. Back then, Kearney wasn't much more than a speck on the Nebraska map, still ain't, if we're being honest. We had a main street with one stoplight, a corner diner where everybody knew what pie you liked, and a schoolhouse that doubled as a church on Sundays. I was born in a house my daddy built with his own 2 hands, and let me tell ya, it creaked in the winter and sweated in the summer, but it held together. Just like we did. Back in my day, kids didn't have phones or fancy sneakers. We had skin knees, shared chores, and big ol' dreams we whispered to the sky when we were supposed to be asleep. I was June Elizabeth then, just June, with long braids and a gap between my front teeth. Lord, I hated that gap. Thought no boy would ever love a girl who smiled like a jack-o'-lantern. But Mama said it made me distinctive, and Daddy said, boys come and go, but you keep that fire, girl. And I believed 'cause back then, I thought kindness could fix anything. That if you baked a pie and said sorry first, the world would always give you another chance. Summers were long and golden, fireflies at dusk, lemonade so sweet it made your jaw ache, and music floatin' outta someone's porch radio. We didn't lock our doors. We didn't have to. Folks brought casseroles when someone got sick and sat on your porch swing when you were feelin' low. No invitation needed. That's just how we did it in those days. I remember hangin' laundry out on the line, watchin' the sheets catch the breeze like sails. My hands would smell like soap and sunshine. And I'd dream big dreams, silly ones. I wanted to go to Nashville, sing like Patsy Cline, wear a red dress, and make people cry with just one verse. But life had other plans. I met Tom Crowley at a county fair when I was just 17. He had this crooked smile and hands that looked like they'd built something. And Lord have mercy, he could dance. I mean really dance, like he heard the beat before it started. We married that next spring. I was still learning how to cook rice without burning it, but there I was, a wife. A Crowley. Just like that. Our first house had a leaky roof and mice in the pantry, but we made do with what we had. I'd sing while I cleaned, hummin' little songs under my breath. Tom would laugh and say I was better than any record on the shelf. I still believed then that people always came back. That family meant forever. That no matter what, love would be enough to hold it all together. It was a softer time, or maybe I was just softer in it. Looking back now, I think about that girl, the one with pie crust under her nails and fire in her chest. I wonder what she'd think of me now. Of this house, this quiet, this ache I carry for children I don't know. I don't think she ever imagined this kind of lonely, but she'd understand it, eventually. That's the thing about growing old. You realize love doesn't always look like how you pictured it on the clothesline when you were 12. Still, I wouldn't trade that world for anything. That old life, with its slow Sundays and soft prayers whispered before bed. It made me who I am. And if nothing else, I still believe kindness matters. I still believe some folks do come back. Maybe not in person, but in stories, in songs, in little videos recorded on quiet mornings with the pie cooling and the past knockin' gentle at your door. It was a Wednesday, not that kind of day you write songs about, just one of those sticky Nebraska afternoons where the sun hangs heavy and the air smells like warm hay and gasoline. I just turned 17 and was helping out at the church fundraiser down by the fairgrounds. Mama had me serving up lemonade in paper cups and keeping the flies off the pies. I remember I had flour on my sleeve from bikini that morning, peach cobbler, my best one yet, and my braid was comin' loose in the back. I wasn't thinking about anything special. Not boys. Not life. Just trying not to sweat through my blasts. And then he walked up, dust on his boots, sleeves rolled, hair almost like he'd argued with the wind and lost. He didn't say much at first. Just tipped his head and smiled, not one of those big city grins, but the kind that starts real slow, like it's a skin permission. And, I'll tell you what, my heart did something strange. Like it remembered a song I hadn't heard yet. I didn't know who he was. Just some farm boy helpin' haul chairs, I figured. But the way he looked at me, not in that she's pretty way, but like he was studying something, it stuck with me. He asked for peach cobbler. "Is it yours?" he said, all soft. I nodded, suddenly nervous, like I'd just been caught doing something wild. He took a bite, closed his eyes, and said, "Lord have mercy." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the tray. That was the first time I heard him talk, and already I knew this boy was gonna take root in me. His name was Tom Crowley, from a town just south of ours. Grew up fixin' tractors and playin' baseball with one arm that didn't quite straighten right from a childhood break. He told me that on our second walk, like it was no big thing. I thought it was the bravest thing I'd ever heard. We started seeing each other after that, slow and sweet. He'd come by with his truck, bring me wildflowers he'd picked from ditches, and tell me stories that didn't have much point but made me smile anyway. I didn't have the words for it then, but something in me softened and shifted. I found myself wanting to know what made him cry, what made him laugh, what kept him up at night. That was new for me. Before Tom, boys were just paper valentines and handsy dances. But this felt like sitting on a porch swing and not needing to talk. Just breathing the same air. Mama liked him, though she pretended not to, said he was too quiet, and that quiet boys always held in trouble. Daddy said nothing much, just gave him a handshake one day that lasted a second too long, like he was checking the weight of Tom's soul. And me? I didn't say the word love. Not yet. But one night we were watching lightning bugs out by Miller's Field, and he reached for my hand, not in a hurry, not asking permission, just like it was the most natural thing in the world. And something inside me said yes. Not loud, not dramatic. Just yes. I didn't know it then, how much that hand would carry me through. How a boy with dust on his boots and a heart full of silence would become my safe place. My anchor, the father of my child, the reason this house still smells like him, even 12 years after he left this earth. I guess what I'm trying to say is, you don't always know when the world tilts. Sometimes it's just a Wednesday. Sometimes it's a spoonful of cobbler and a look that lingers too long. And sometimes it's a hand you don't want to let go of, even when you have to. I reckon most stories don't fall apart all at once. It's quieter than that. A drift, a sigh, a silence where there used to be music. That's how it started for me. With silence. It was the fall of '67, and the fields were already going gold. Tom and I had been married just under 3 years. We were renting a small white house with a garden he'd planted, proud as anything of those crooked carrots and sweet peas that didn't quite pod right. Life was small, sure, but it was ours, and we were happy, or so I thought. Then one morning I woke up fleeting. Not much, but enough to know something wasn't right. I was 2 months along, barely showing. We hadn't even told anybody yet, just whispered plans in the dark and picked out names we never said during the day. If it's a girl, I'd start, and he'd smile, pulling me closer, like the world was soft and certain. But that morning, that softness just vanished. We went to the doctor in town, old Dr. Helverson, bless his soul, with the kind hands and tired eyes. He told us gently, said these things happen, said it wasn't my fault, but it felt like it was. I nodded, held tight to Tom's hand, said thank you, and walked out like someone had just handed me the weather forecast. And that's when the silence began. Tom didn't know what to say. Men back then didn't. He brought me tea, built a fire, kissed the top of my head. But we never talked about her. The baby. Not once. It was like she never happened, like she was a bruise you couldn't show in church. And me? I just got quieter. Kept baking pies, kept cleaning, kept smiling like nothing had caved in. I think that's when I started folding my grief into things. Into crusts. Into towels. Into corners of the house nobody visited. I'd cry while hanging laundry and wipe my tears on pillowcases that still smelled like sun. But I never said, I'm hurting. I didn't know how. Mama came by once during that time, brought soup, told me I looked tired, and I wanted so badly to fall into her lap like I did when I was 6, but all she said was, well, you can try again. That was her way. Not cruel, just practical. Back in her day, you didn't wallow. You moved on. I nodded, stirred the soup, said I was fine, but I wasn't fine. Something in me cracked open. I started second-guessing everything. Was I too soft? Too fragile? Maybe Tom wanted a sturdier woman, one who didn't cry over nothing. I didn't want to be a burden. So I stuffed it all down, deep, like a letter you never send. And then Cindy came. A year later, our rainbow. And I poured every ounce of love I had into her, maybe too much. I was terrified to lose again, terrified of loving wrong. So I held her too tight, watched her sleep like my breath depended on hers. And when she cried, I cried too, quietly in the kitchen, pretending to peel onions. Tom tried. He really did. But I think he missed the girl I was before, the one who sang while she cooked and didn't flinch when someone said, "Baby." I tried to bring her back, wore the red lipstick again, played Patsy Cline louder than I should have. But the girl was gone, and I never quite forgave myself for it. That was the beginning of the shift, though I didn't know it then. The start of learning that life doesn't always break with thunder. Sometimes it just fades in the corners. And when no one talks about the pain, it settles into the wallpaper, into the way you hold your child, into the way she'll remember you too much, too careful, too quiet. That was my first real fear, not of dying, but of being too much for someone I loved, and not enough at the same time. I remember the clock. That awful green kitchen clock with the fake brass trim and the second hand that always ticked just a little too loud. It was 3:41 p.m. when everything changed. I know because I couldn't stop looking at it. Like if I stared long enough, time might go backward, might undo the words, the way her eyes looked, the way her hands trembled just before she grabbed her purse. Cindy had come over with the kids. Rare thing, even then. They were still little, the baby barely a toddler, the oldest just starting school. I had made roast chicken, just like she used to love, with those buttery rolls she'd beg for back when her legs didn't even reach the floor at the table. I set the table nice. Cloth napkins. Lemonade in the pitcher with slices floating just so. I even wore my good cardigan, the one Tom bought me before he passed. I wanted everything to feel warm, familiar, like home, but it wasn't. Not to her. I could tell the second she stepped in, her shoulders tight, jaw clenched, eyes scanning like she was already planning her exit. The kids were quiet, too quiet, clung to her legs like barn cats. I bent down, smiled, opened my arms, and they didn't move. Just looked at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. We sat, ate in silence mostly. I asked questions, tried to sound light. "How's school, sweetheart? You still playing piano?" But Cindy answered for them. Quick, curt, like she was blocking me out piece by piece. And then I said it. "Lord, I wish I hadn't." "You know, Cindy," I said gently, I thought gently, "it might be nice if they spent a Saturday here sometime. Just us. I've been knitting them little socks, and I was thinking maybe we could make cookies." She cut me off. Sharp, cold. "You always do this," she said. I blinked. "Do what?" "You push. You make everything about you. You want the kids here so you can play grandma. Pretend you weren't the mother who couldn't listen without judging, who made me feel like nothing I did was ever enough." The words hit like a door slam. I felt my chest go hollow. I didn't mean. She stood up. "No, you never mean it, Mom. But you do it. Every time. You act like you're being kind, but it's control. Always has been. I'm not 12 anymore. And they're my kids. Not yours to mold. Not yours to fix." The clock ticked, ticked, ticked. And in that moment, I felt it, the shift. Like something in the air cracked and fell, silent and invisible, but permanent. I reached for her arm. "Cindy, please." She pulled away like my touch burned her. I don't want them growing up with guilt, with shame, with you pretending love only comes when things are done your way. And then she turned, took her babies by the hands, walked out my door, didn't even take the pie I'd wrapped for her. I stood there, in my good cardigan, roast chicken still warm, rolls still soft, and the clock kept ticking. 3:42. 3:43. I don't remember how long I stood like that. Maybe hours, maybe days. What I do remember is how still the house felt after. Not quiet still, like the walls were listening, but too polite to say what they heard. That day, I lost more than my daughter. I lost the illusion that love, all my baking, all my careful words, all my second guesses, could undo the things I never knew I'd done wrong. And I realized something no mother wants to admit. Sometimes, you try your best, and it's still not enough. You know, I never thought silence could be so loud. It fills the house now, not like a guest, but like it owns the place. There's a kind of stillness that seeps into your bones when the voices stop coming, when the phone doesn't ring, when the mail's just bills and catalogs you didn't ask for. After Cindy walked out that day, things didn't fall apart. They just stopped. I still got up every morning, still made the tea, though now it's just one cup. Set it on the kitchen table like I used to, sometimes across from an empty plate, just for the memory of company. Old habits die slow. I'd open the curtains wide, let in the sun, pretend it meant something. Pretend it was enough. It wasn't. I stopped knitting for a while. What was the point? The socks didn't have feet waiting for 'em anymore. I'd sit with the yarn in my lap, needles idle, hands still. Sometimes I'd hum, out of instinct, then catch myself and go quiet again. The music didn't sound right in a house that didn't echo with laughter. I started talking to the wind. Don't laugh. Some days it was the only thing that answered back. I'd sit on the porch swing the one Tom hung back in '75 when he promised we'd grow old here, and I'd let the air push me, slow and steady, like time itself was trying to rock me into forgetting. The neighbors stopped to skin about Cindy after a while. Folks mean well, but they get tired of sad stories. And I got tired of telling em she's busy or we're fine. We weren't. I wasn't. But that's just the way things are sometimes. I kept picking. Funny, I know. No one to eat the pies, but I'd still fill the house with cinnamon and vanilla like it mattered. Maybe it did. Maybe the smell was the only thing left of who I used to be, the woman who could fix things with sugar and a little butter. I lost track of birthdays. Hers. The kids. Didn't mark M on the calendar anymore. Felt easier that way. Less cruel. I didn't want to sit by the window hoping for footsteps that never came. And church, well, I stopped going for a spell. It just didn't feel the same without someone's little hand in mine, squirming in the pews, whispering questions I couldn't answer. I'd sit in the back once in a while, but even God felt distant then. Or maybe I was the one who stepped away. I started questioning things. Was I really too much? Too hard? Too old-fashioned? Maybe I was. Maybe love comes with an expiration date if you don't water it right. I replayed every argument, every sigh, every look from Cindy that I missed at the time. Thought maybe if I'd just kept my mouth shut more, things would be different. But then I'd think, wasn't I trying? Weren't we all just trying? The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was the way it started to feel normal. I'd walk past the kids' photos on the shelf, still little, still smiling, and I wouldn't cry. Not anymore. Just dust the frames. Straighten them. Keep moving. Grief doesn't always howl. Sometimes it folds your laundry and waters your plants and answers, "I'm fine," when no one's really a skin. People talk a lot about forgiveness, how it sets you free. But they don't talk about the silence that comes after. The slow, aching nothing. The waiting you never admit to, even to yourself. I don't hate Cindy. I never did. I just miss the version of us that laughed over burnt toast and cried during commercials. I miss the noise. Because this house? It's too clean now. Too still. Too quiet. It started with a tray of cookies and a flyer on the bulletin board down by the post office. Story time volunteers needed, it said, with one of those cheerful fonts that tries a little too hard. I almost walked right past it. Almost. But something, maybe boredom, maybe grace, made me stop. I tore off one of the little paper tabs with the number at the bottom and tucked it in my coat pocket, even though I wasn't sure why. The flyers sat on my counter for 3 days. Then, one Thursday morning, I found myself baking oatmeal cookies. Not because anyone asked. Just because the kitchen felt too quiet, and the weather was soft, and I'd found raisins in the back of the pantry. I didn't even think I'd go anywhere. But as the cookies cooled, I thought, well now, what harm would it do? So I packed them up, careful not to stack and too tight, and drove down to the little library on Maple Street. The one with the crooked steps and the chipped lion's statue out front. I hadn't been there in years. The same old bell rang when I opened the door. And behind the desk was a young gal with pink glasses and a messy bun, looking like she hadn't slept in a week. "Hi," I said, feeling like I'd shown up to a party without an invite. "I brought cookies." She blinked. "Oh, for the kids." I nodded. Thought they might like a treat for story time. And, just like that, she smiled. A real one. The kind that makes you feel like you've been seen. They let me sit in the back that day. I didn't read, just listened. Watched the little ones wiggle and whisper and get shushed. Watched their mamas try to juggle diaper bags and snack cups and exhaustion. And something in me warmed not all at once, but like the first hint of spring air after a long freeze. The next week, I came back. This time with lemon bars. Then again, banana bread. And then, one Tuesday, the pink glasses girl asked, "Would you want to read next time?" I hesitated. My voice hadn't been used like that in a while. But I said yes. I practiced at home for 2 days. Sat in the living room reading corduroy to no one, pretending the empty chairs were full of tiny ears. And that Friday, I read to a roomful of kids with graham cracker crumbs on their shirts and sippy cups under their feet. And for 20 minutes, I wasn't just a woman with a quiet house and a clock that ticked too loud. I was Miss June. And you know what? One of the little boys, maybe 6, curly hair, sticky hands hugged my leg when it was over and said, "You smell like Grandma." And Lord have mercy, I had to sit down right then and there. That was the day something cracked open again. Not all the way. Not the kind of healing folks write books about, but just enough. Just enough to remind me that love doesn't always come back the way you expect. Sometimes it shows up sticky and barefoot, with applesauce on its chin, a skin for one more page before nap time. And I thought maybe I've still got a little light left to give. Not the kind that fixes everything, but the kind that warms the room just a little. That Friday afternoon, I drove home with the windows cracked and the sun setting behind the grain silos, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was disappearing. Maybe that's all hope is. A tray of cookies, and someone to share them with. There's a box in the hall closet, old, beat up, brown with frayed corners. I've moved it from shelf to shelf over the years, always manning to go through it, but never quite finding the courage. It's not big, but it's heavy in that strange way things become when they're filled with too much time. This morning, after I dusted the windowsills and refolded the dish towels I didn't use, I stood in front of that closet for a long while. Just stood there, my hand on the doorknob, heart thumping like it had somewhere to be. I opened it. Inside was everything I hadn't said. Letters I wrote and never sent. Little drawings Cindy made when she was 5, one of me with a big red heart on my chest and a crooked smile. Ticket stubs, a dried flower from our front yard, pressed between the pages of a hymn book. A list of baby names Tom, and I scribbled the night we found out I was pregnant the first time. I held that paper like it might turn warm in my hand again, like the years hadn't buried it. I sat on the floor and started to cry. Not the kind of cry you do when you're feeling sorry for yourself. This was different. This was crying from the soles of your feet. The kind that peels something off you. And I let it come. Every ache, every guilt, every what if I'd packed into that box with the brittle corners and forgotten dreams. And when I was done, when my face was wet and my shoulders finally felt still, I did something I hadn't done in years. I forgave myself. Not all at once. Not in the way they write about in devotionals or morning shows. But enough. Enough to say, June, you tried. Maybe not always the right way. But you did. I loved my daughter the best I could with the tools I had, tools that were handed to me by women who never got to cry on linoleum floors with the closet door open. And that counts for something. I folded the baby name list, put it in my apron pocket, and then I did it. I closed the box, tied it shut with an old ribbon, took it out back to the burn barrel Tom used to use for leaves and scraps, and I set it down inside. I lit a match. I watched the corners catch, curl, turn black, then glow. I watched the words and papers and silences turn to ash, drift up into the morning sky like a prayer finally released. That was my choice. To stop living in the ache. To stop counting the quiet hours like debts. To let my heart stop begging for a second chance that might never come. I chose peace. Not the kind where everything's tied up in a bow. Lord knows life don't work that way, but the kind that lives in your chest when you stop holding your breath. I chose to live the rest of my days not as a woman mourning the love she lost, but as one who still has some left to give. Later that afternoon, I sat on the porch swaying with a cup of tea and no makeup. And when the wind picked up, it didn't feel cold. It felt like someone was brushing my cheek real gentle. Maybe God, maybe Tom, maybe just time itself saying, you're all right now. So I'll keep reading to the kids at the library. I'll keep baking pies for folks who don't expect M. And I'll keep talking to my grandbabies through this camera, even if they never see it. Because I've still got stories. I've still got love. And from now on, I'm not keeping any of it in a box. If you ever find this, if someday you stumble on an old video with a tired voice and a face you don't quite recognize, I hope you stay long enough to hear what I'm about to say. You don't know me, not really. And I've come to terms with that. I don't blame you. It's just the way things turned out. Life twists in strange ways. People drift. Doors close, sometimes gently, sometimes with a slam, and you don't always get to open them again. But I want you to know I've been thinking about you longer than you've been alive. Isn't that something? I loved you before you had names, before I ever saw your faces, and even now after the silence and the empty chairs and all the birthdays missed, that love hasn't gone anywhere. It just changed shape. I used to think love meant holding on tight, being there, correcting what's wrong, keeping folks safe, even when they didn't ask you to. I thought it was my job to be the strong one, the wise one, the one who knew. But over time, I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go. Let people walk away if they need to. Let them grow into whoever they're meant to be, even if it breaks your heart not to be part of it. Here's what else I know. You can love someone and still hurt them. You can mean well and still be wrong. And sometimes you don't get to fix it. Sometimes all you can do is stand still, hold that ache gentle, and choose not to pass it on. I won't pretend I have all the answers. Land sakes alive, I'm still figuring things out, and I've got gray hair to prove it. But if I've learned one thing, it's this. Don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for someone to say what you need to hear. Don't wait for time to make it easier. Because time don't heal nothing on its own. It just gives you more silence to sit in. If you've got something to say, say it. If you miss someone, tell them. If your heart's carrying too much, set it down. Because life's too short to keep every feeling in the attic, wrapped in paper and marked someday. I wasted too many years hoping someone else would make the first move. I thought silence was safer, but now I know silence is where love goes to disappear, and I won't live in that silence anymore. So this is me speaking up. To you, my sweet grandbabies, whether you ever hear this or not. To anyone who's waiting on an apology or a miracle, or just the courage to reach out. Here's my wisdom, plain and simple. Let go of the story where you're always waiting. Start a new one. Bake the pie. Write the letter. Make the call. Or just whisper their name into the wind and hope it finds them. It's not about being right. It's about being real. And me? I've decided to be real for whatever time I've got left. Because maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Well, now we've come to the end of this little story I've been carrying around for a long time. And I thank you for sitting with me here in this quiet corner of the world, listening to a voice that's maybe a little older than most. It's funny how life works, how one small thing, like the smell of an apple pie, can open a door to years of memories, to love and loss, and all the bits in between. I've told you about the times when the house was full of laughter, and the times when silence sat heavier than the winter snow. About the little boy with dust on his boots who danced his way into my heart, about my daughter Cindy and the words we never quite found to heal the spaces between us, and about the grandkids I've never really known, but love just the same. And through it all, I've been wondering, as you might be, too, about what love really means. Is it holding on tight? Or is it knowing when to let go? Does true love always find its way back? Or sometimes, does it just live quietly, in the corners of our hearts, even when the doors stay closed? I don't have all the answers, dear ones. But I do have this. Love is a stubborn thing. It's the softest thread that holds us together, even when everything else unravels. It's the light you leave on, just in case someone finds their way home. And sometimes, it's the memory of a song sung in a kitchen long ago, or the scent of cinnamon and apples that carries you back when you least expect it. Sometimes, I think about Tom, about that crooked smile and those strong hands that built our little world. Sometimes, when the wind catches just right and the kettle whistles softly, I swear I can feel him sitting beside me on the porch swing. I think maybe, just maybe, he remembers. Maybe the love we shared is still floating out there somewhere, waiting for the day when it can be found again. And that's what I want you to carry with you, the hope that love never truly leaves. That even when people drift apart and silence falls like a shadow, the light remains. Whether it's in a whispered prayer, a forgotten photo, or a video made by a grandmother who just wanted her grandkids to know she loved them, no matter what. So, I'll leave this light on. For you. For them. For anyone who needs a little warmth in the dark. And before I go, I want to ask you something, straight from my heart. Do you believe true love should find its way back? Or do you think sometimes love is meant to stay, quietly, where it first took root, changing shape, but never really gone? Think about that. And if you're like me and you've got a story tucked away, maybe one that's been hard to tell, I hope you find the courage to share it. To let the light in, even if it's just a little flicker. Thank you for listening. For holding this story gently. And maybe, just maybe, I'll see you again in the rustle of the leaves, the steam from a fresh cup of tea, or the soft hum of an old Patsy Cline record. Until then, take care of your hearts. They're the truest homes we'll ever have.